I always knew my neighbor Karen had a complicated relationship with reality, but I didn't realize she'd built her own private kingdom, complete with imaginary borders. According to her, my fence had trespassed into her empire. The first time she accused me, I thought she was joking. The second time, I realized she wasn't. And by the third, that's when the circus came to town. It all began one bright Saturday morning. I was on my porch, enjoying coffee and birdsong, when I heard the unmistakable snap of a tape measure. There stood Karen, sunglasses, clipboard, and the authority of a self-crowned neighborhood monarch. She barked, "Do you realize this fence is 2 feet on my land?" I blinked, certain I'd drifted into a sitcom. "Karen," I said, "this fence has been here since before we both moved in." She scoffed. "That's what you think." I checked the records. Now, when Karen says she checked the records, that usually means she zoomed in on Google Maps once and declared herself an expert. She stomped off, muttering about encroachment and legal action. The following morning, my yard looked like a flag parade. Bright orange markers stabbed into my grass like warning signs from a confused treasure hunter. That's when I realized she was serious. A letter from the HOA arrived soon after, demanding I remove my structure within 7 days. I called the office half laughing, half stunned. "It's just a fence," I said. Marlene, the HOA chair and Karen's partner in petty power, answered sweetly, "Sir, Karen has provided evidence." The evidence was a blurry photo and a screenshot from Google Earth. I nearly spilled my coffee laughing. But replacing the fence? That would cost thousands. And no way was I letting a self-appointed queen make up the laws of the land. So, I decided to call in a professional, someone whose map actually mattered. A licensed land surveyor. Before we dive deeper into this neighborhood drama, I just want to say thank you for being here. If stories about justice, irony, and HOA chaos make your day a little brighter, consider hitting like and subscribing. Every bit of support helps me bring you more real-life battles between reason and ridiculousness. Now back to our regularly scheduled showdown. I told Karen that an actual surveyor would be inspecting the property. She smirked as if she'd already written the ending. "Good idea," she said sweetly. "That way, when it proves I'm right, you'll have no excuse." Bless her confidence, it was eternal, like her complaints. A few days later, Jim, the surveyor, arrived. Calm, polite, and immune to neighborhood drama, he set up his tripod. Karen, of course, appeared instantly, armed with a binder, a smirk, and the energy of someone auditioning for HOA Wars Season 2. "Finally," she announced to anyone within earshot. "A professional who can confirm my property's been invaded." Jim nodded quietly, focused on his work. For the next hour, he paced, measured, and scribbled notes with the patience of a saint, while Karen hovered just inches away, whispering helpful advice. When he finally finished, the world seemed to pause. Karen stood tall, ready for victory. I crossed my arms, also ready. But for popcorn, Jim turned to me first, then to her. "According to county records," he said evenly, "the fence is exactly 2 feet inside your property line. Perfectly placed. In fact, your neighbor's shed slightly crosses his." The silence that followed was magnificent. You could have heard a fence post drop. Karen's face froze. "My shed?" Jim nodded. "Yes, ma'am, about 18 inches onto his land." Karen went pale. She mumbled something about old maps before storming back into her house. Jim packed up, chuckling softly. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," he said. "Oh, I think I'd be exactly the right amount of surprised," I replied. The next morning, the orange flags vanished. The smugness gone too, but I knew better than to think she was finished. Karen wasn't retreating, she was regrouping. Just when life started to feel peaceful again, I came home to an envelope taped to my door, a letter stamped with the HOA logo as if it were a royal decree. Marlene wrote that due to recent boundary concerns, the HOA was reviewing all property lines. Translation: Karen had thrown another tantrum, and the board decided to humor her by punishing everyone. When I stopped by the HOA office, a glorified shed that smelled of burnt coffee, Marlene smiled that diplomatic smile. "The kind that hides a dagger, Mr. Benson," she said. We just want fairness. Fairness, I replied, or Karen's feelings. That smile twitched. Within days, every neighbor was furious. Not with me, but with Karen. The Facebook group for our block turned into a fiery forum of memes, complaints, and people vowing never to let her near another measuring tape. My favorite comment read, "If Karen thinks she's Mother Nature, she can move my fence too." But Karen didn't slow down. Not even close. A few days later, Karen knocked again, clipboard in hand, reflective vest blazing, a gleam of righteousness in her eyes. "I've prepared the original plat map," she declared, handing me something that looked suspiciously like a child's school project. North was sideways. The scale was nonsense. And yes, my fence was drawn in purple crayon. "Karen," I said, trying not to laugh, "this looks creative." "It's from city archives," she snapped. I held up my phone, opening the county's legitimate map. "Then explain why your version has your name in bubble letters." She gasped, snatched it back, mumbled something about classified documents, and marched off. I thought that was the finale, until the HOA meeting that weekend. Karen burst in like she was exposing national secrets, waving a folder with fake official stamps. "This community's property lines are all wrong," she proclaimed. A retired city engineer in the audience squinted at her map. "Karen," he said slowly, "these stamps are from the Parks Department. And this font is—" "Comic Sans!" Laughter erupted. Karen, red-faced, stormed out. It should have ended there. But 2 days later, I got an email from the county office asking if I'd authorized a Miss Karen Miller to alter my property record. She had submitted a crayon sketch as an official boundary correction. The county clerk was still laughing when she called me. At that point, I knew Karen wasn't playing games anymore. She was rewriting history. And now it was my move. After the great crayon debacle, I prayed for silence, a week without flyers or flags. Life rewarded me with 3 peaceful days. On the 4th, I saw it, an unfamiliar truck in Karen's driveway. The logo read Precision Property Consultants. I groaned. Either she'd decided to plant trees, or she'd found new experts to validate her crusade. Spoiler, it was the latter. 2 confused men stepped out, carrying tape measures and clipboards. Karen stood nearby with a megaphone, shouting directions like a construction foreman possessed. "Start from the lilac bush." "That's the true corner." One of the workers caught my stunned glance. He whispered, "She wants proof her yard is 4 feet bigger." I almost dropped my phone laughing. "Good luck," I said. By afternoon, her lawn looked like an archaeological site. Random flags, tangled string, and one stake planted dead center through her mailbox. The men packed up early, clearly rethinking their career choices. Later, I learned why they seemed bewildered. They were landscapers, not surveyors. She'd hired them off Craigslist under measurement assistance. Even the neighborhood kids were watching from their bikes. Narrating like wildlife documentarians, here we see Karen marking territory in the wild. While she redecorated her yard with chaos, I went digging another way, legally. Down at the county office, I asked for the subdivision's original plats. The clerk handed me a folder, and what I found made my jaw drop. Karen's property corrections had been updated 10 years ago. The developer had mismeasured, and she herself had signed the correction. Meaning, she'd known all along she was wrong. It wasn't just delusion anymore, it was deception. I made copies. Lots of them. Enough to fill a binder, thick enough to stun a charging HOA. Next stop, the monthly meeting. Typically, HOA meetings rank just below watching paint dry, but that night, attendance was standing room only. Everyone smelled gossip. Karen strutted in last, sunglasses indoors, clipboard locked like a security blanket. The room buzzed with anticipation. Before she could speak, I stood up. "Before we start," I said, placing my binder on the table with a theatrical thunk, "I'd like to present some documents about property boundaries." Marlene frowned. "That's not on the agenda." "Oh, I think it will be," I said. I opened to the signed correction, county seal, date, and Karen's signature clear as daylight. Gasps rippled through the room like wind through leaves. "For the past decade," I announced, Karen's known her boundary was corrected. Yet she's accused multiple neighbors of encroachment. Wait, she did that to me too, shouted Bob from 2 houses down. And me, added another. Suddenly, the entire room erupted. Residents waved HOA fines and letters like battle flags. Marlene tried to gavel order, but her voice drowned beneath furious neighbors demanding answers. Karen's complexion went from ivory to beet red. "Those documents are forged!" "Really?" I slid her signature across the table. The county clerk confirmed this morning. She looked down and everyone saw it. The flicker of recognition. "This means nothing," she snapped. "I am the HOA." Someone in the back shouted, "Not anymore! You're not!" In the chaos that followed, the board held an emergency vote. Within minutes, Karen was removed from her property compliance throne, and just like that, the neighborhood tyrant was dethroned. But karma wasn't finished delivering mail yet. 2 quiet weeks went by after the HOA showdown, and just as I started to believe peace had finally returned, a white pickup rolled up in front of Karen's house. On its door, the seal of the city's building inspection department. I nearly spilled my lemonade from the porch. An inspector, tape measure in hand, marched straight into her yard. Within 10 minutes, he was frowning at her infamous shed, the very one that had sneaked 1.5 feet onto my property. He scribbled notes, measured again for good measure, and then slapped a large orange notice on her door. Structure must be relocated or removed. I had to bite my lip not to laugh. The same fluorescent color she'd once used for her little property flags had finally come back to decorate her own door. Sweet symmetry. Karen stormed out wearing gardening gloves in outrage. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You people must have moved the earth." "He changed the land just to trap me." The inspector blinked once, utterly calm. "Ma'am," he said, "the planet doesn't rotate that fast." Neighbors peeked from behind curtains like moviegoers watching a live-action comedy. Over the next few days, a small crew arrived to drag her shed precisely 18 inches to the left. Every hammer strike rang out like poetic percussion. Even the birds seemed to chirp in rhythm as the once reigning HOA monarch paced, phone in hand, muttering about injustice and faulty compasses. When the work ended, she stood there scowling at the corrected shed, a dethroned ruler surveying the remains of her cardboard empire. For the first evening in months, I looked across my fence line and saw no flags, no shouting, just still air and the faint scent of new cement. Justice had finally, literally, found its footing. News of Karen's comeuppance spread faster than the aroma of grilled burgers. My neighbor Sam decided we had to celebrate. He dubbed it the fence-warming fiesta. Invitations went out through our group chat with one glorious tagline: 2 feet of freedom BBQ, BYOB, bring your own boundary. That Saturday, the cul-de-sac transformed into a festival. Kids zipped by on bikes waving tiny construction flags. Adults clustered around coolers and laughed about how close we'd all come to turning the neighborhood into a courtroom. Someone brought cupcakes topped with miniature picket fences made of pretzel sticks. Another neighbor offered lemonade named Surveyor's Punch. The playlist alternated between country tunes about home and one ironic track about breaking fences. No lyrics reproduced, but everyone caught the joke. Even the newly reformed HOA board showed up, Marlene included, now significantly less regal. They apologized for the unpleasant misunderstandings and promised future decisions would be based on real maps instead of crayons. Applause erupted, good-natured, cathartic. As twilight settled, string lights glowed along the fence that had survived the storm. People snapped photos in front of it like it was a local landmark. Sam raised a toast. Here's to boundaries that bring people together instead of tearing them apart. Glasses clinked. Laughter spilled into the night. I caught myself smiling, not because I'd won, but because the community had reclaimed its sense of humor. Out of everyone, only one house stayed dark. Karen's curtains were drawn tight, her driveway empty. Rumor said she refused to come outside until the fence mob disbanded. Truth was, there was no mob, just neighbors grateful the drama had finally packed up its clipboard. When the last lantern flickered out, I looked at my fence, perfectly straight under the moonlight, and whispered a little thank you to patience, to truth, and maybe to karma's impeccable timing. Weeks later, the morning felt suspiciously calm until a moving truck appeared in front of Karen's house. My phone buzzed immediately. The neighborhood was alert faster than a flock of pigeons spotting breadcrumbs. "She's leaving?" Sure enough, there she was, hair tied back, clipboard tucked under one arm, tapping her foot as the movers loaded boxes marked office, garden, tools, and important documents. I wondered if any of those held the legendary crayon map collection. Her demeanor was a strange mix of defiance and defeat. At one point, she measured the moving truck ramp, perhaps ensuring it didn't cross someone's property line. Old habits die hard. A few of us watched from afar as the final box disappeared into the truck. She gave her mailbox a long, dramatic look, then climbed into the passenger seat without looking back. The truck rumbled off, leaving behind a faint scent of paint, tension, and expired authority. The sigh that followed from the gathered neighbors sounded like the first day of spring after a brutal winter. Within hours, conversation shifted to lighter things: garden projects, Saturday markets, the return of peace. A month later, a cheerful young couple bought the house, newlyweds with a golden retriever and zero interest in turf wars. During introductions, they hesitantly asked, "So what happened with the previous owner?" We all smiled. "Long story," Sam said. "Best left inside the HOA archives." Rumor later reached us through a friend of a friend that Karen had joined another homeowner association 2 counties away. Early reports suggested she'd already questioned the angles of their mailboxes. The legend, it seems, continues, just on a fresh field. Sometimes, as dusk paints the street gold, I lean back on my porch and stare at that fence. Same panels, same posts. Yet now it feels like a monument to patience, persistence, and good documentation. People often ask if I'd undo the whole saga given the choice. Oddly, no, because every nightmare HOA story needs its happy ending, and ours taught an unforgettable lesson. No amount of clipboard confidence beats facts checked thrice. Jim, the surveyor, still drives by occasionally. Every time he gives a little 2-fingered salute, a silent joke we share about standing our ground. The new board keeps things mellow, monthly emails, not decrees, and the neighborhood barbecue is officially an annual event. As for Karen, occasionally a distant rumor surfaces. She's petitioning to rename a drainage ditch Her Majesty's Creek or challenging another poor soul's mailbox height. Wherever she pitches her clipboard, I wish her well and patience to her new neighbors. I take another sip of coffee, watching sunlight trace the top edge of the fence. It's straight, steady, and very much mine. In a world where some people crave control more than cooperation, a simple fence can stand for more than property. It can mark the line between nonsense and sanity. So here's to good boundaries, both literal and personal, and to every calm cup of coffee enjoyed without the rustle of measuring tape. Because sometimes the sweetest victories are quiet,